We will bring the regular assembly meeting to order for January 12th, 2026. Mr. Kelly, will you lead us in the flag salute? Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Steininger, will you read our land acknowledgement, please?
We would like to acknowledge that City and Borough of Juneau is on Tlingit land and wish to honor the indigenous people of this land. For more than 10,000 years, Alaska Native people have been and continue to be integral to the well-being of our community. We're grateful to be in this place, a part of this community, and to honor the culture, traditions, and resilience of the Tlingit people.
So thank you for that, Mr. Steininger. Madam Clerk, will you call roll, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Deputy Mayor Smith.
Here.
Ms. Hughes Candies.
Here.
Ms. Wall.
Present.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Ms. Adkisson.
Here.
Mr. Steininger.
Here.
Mr. Brooks.
Here.
You have quorum and for the Madam Mayor.
Here.
You have quorum and for the record, Ms. Hall is absent.
Thank you for that, Madam Clerk. So special order of business, we do have one item, although I want to make a quick mention. On January 5th, we lost a long time Genoite, Jurdis Baxter. And I see a grandson, correct, Corey, in the audience today. So Jurdis was an amazing woman if you met her, and she was the last known survivor of the diphtheria epidemic in Nome that we do the Iditarod now, but she lived to be 101, so those are really good years, and she would have been 102 next month. So our hearts go out to the Baxter family, and congratulations on living a great life. So with that, our next item of special order business is Chief Etheridge. Come on up. I have a sweater, but it's too hot, so I'm not going to put it on. This is what a firefighter looks like with they've been off for a few days. So anyway, this is a proclamation in recognition of Chief Richard Etheridge. Whereas the City and Borough of Juneau Assembly is honored to recognize the many accomplishments Richard Etheridge, Capital City Fire and Rescue Fire Chief, and whereas on December 31st, 2025, after a 27-year career with the city and 33 years in public safety, Chief Etheridge will be retiring. And whereas Chief Etheridge has been the fire chief for the CBJ since 2010, and whereas Chief Etheridge's career in emergency services began in the summer of 1961 as a wildland firefighter for the State of Alaska Division of Forestry on the Kenai Peninsula, and whereas in 1992 he joined the Glacier Volunteer Fire Department as a volunteer firefighter and EMT, and whereas after pursuing an opportunity to expand his public safety background as an Alaska State Trooper from 1998 to 2002, Chief Etheridge returned to Capital City Fire Rescue as the Fire Prevention Officer. And whereas Chief Etheridge has engaged in his community and profession, serving on the Local Emergency Planning Committee Board, the Alaska Arson Investigators Board of Directors, Alaska Municipal League, and as a president of the Alaska Fire Chiefs Association. And whereas during the COVID pandemic, Chief Etheridge responded with quick and effective coordination of mobile testing sites around town and at the airport, supported the vaccine rollout, and assisted with the development of mobile integrated health program. And whereas Chief Etheridge, in collaboration with city leadership, recognized gaps in the availability and reach of critical community services and led the development of the CARES program to strengthen and expand care for those most in need, setting a new standard of coordination and excellence. And whereas Chief Etheridge's general stewardship of the department helped evolve their approach to a medical first approach, and whereas in his retirement, Chief Etheridge will focus on his growing woodworking business. He makes excellent pens. Now, therefore, I, Beth A. Weldon, Mayor of the City and Borough of Juneau, Alaska, and the City and Borough Assembly do hereby express our sincere appreciation and thanks to Chief Richard Etheridge for his longstanding commitment to public safety and our community, and highly commend him for the manner in which he has carried out his duties and responsibilities. We're not done. They're getting way ahead of us. But thank you. Mr. Barr wanted to say a few comments.
I do, yeah. I've had the pleasure of working with Rich for, I don't know, a little over a decade, more closely in the past since the pandemic, right? When we started working together quite closely, and then since the pandemic as your supervisor. And as I was thinking about what I wanted to say, I was trying to come up with like a couple of words that described your character and your work on the job. And what kept coming to mind is the kind of calm, professional way that you just carry yourself in really challenging, sometimes really challenging situations that we're also often talking about really, really, really hard life safety issues, right? Where people are experiencing their worst day. You brought and provided example of that calm professionalism and expertise. And you are one of the things that I always admired about you, that I admire about you, is your not only willingness, but the way you thrive on leading from the front. I remember during the glove, I needed to like get out into a couple of years ago, I needed to get out into the streets, and I was like, I can't, my car can't get out there. Like the roads are too deep. And like, I said that to me, you were like, well, I'm here, like, I'll pick you up. And you got me out, and saw what I needed to see. I can think of examples of when people experience house fires, like you are often the person there, right? Providing solace, helping them understand what is one of the most tragic situations of their lives. That care and compassion led you to lead the department through the establishment of the CARES program that the mayor mentioned, and Mobile Integrated Health and Crisis Now. And developing those programs took years of effort and partnership and collaboration and pulling outside groups along, kind of iteration by iteration, and you persevered and you got it done before you retired. So I'm gonna miss you. Juneau was well served by your tenure. So thank you so much.
I'll be brief. I just want to say thank you to both the city manager and deputy city manager. You guys have been super supportive, super gracious through my plethora of mistakes that I've made over the years. But we've always figured it out and got everything going. And I also want to say thank you to the entire assembly for your support for the department. All these years, I've never had to be worried about, unfair budget cuts or, things like that. Everything, you guys have always been there to back up the department. So I appreciate that. And just want to say thank you for the opportunities. Great. Thank you.
And Chief Etheridge, you don't have to stay and listen to us. Lots of papers. All right, with that, we will go to our our approval of minutes. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that we approve the December 17th, 2025 Special Assembly Meeting minutes and ask for unanimous consent.
Any objection? Seeing none, those Those minutes are approved.
I move that we approve the December 15th regular assembly meeting minutes and ask for unanimous consent.
Any objection? Seeing none, those are approved. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Next, we're going to go to the manager's request for agenda changes. I have kind of moved things around and asked her to do staff reports first, so people could hear about where we are with all the snow and our emergency at hand. So, Madam Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Weldon. Yes, my request to amend the agenda is just to add a staff report on the December 2025 through January 2026 winter storm event. I also, as a separate staff report, can update you on advocacy for GLOF mitigation if you would like. But we should probably start with what we're living right now, the winter disaster. So I will just go ahead. So January 6th, the City and Borough of Juneau and Tlingit and Haida issued a disaster declaration for the 2025-2026 winter storm event. The governor quickly followed with a verbal state declaration opening up state resources to our response efforts. The Assembly also the following day held a meeting passing Resolution 4038 declaring the storm event an emergency. That declaration has allowed us to access the state resources. It has mobilized the state EOC. They've been here on the ground at all of our EOC meetings. We did stand up an EOC before that declaration. I do want to just provide some context. We've gotten why didn't we issue a disaster declaration earlier? And it was really an evolving event, right? We issue a declaration when our own resources have been overwhelmed. And I think if you are a constituent who's trying to get out of your driveway, you're like, our resources are overwhelmed because I have a 7-foot berm in front of my driveway and I can't drive my road. The state was already working and continues to work overtime with snow removal. So there were no resources to avail us of more equipment operators or more equipment, right? That's not we're on our own in that regard because of the isolated nature of our community. And also there were a lot of private citizens who were struggling with snow removal on their private property, either their roof or their driveways. That is something that I acknowledge that is a tremendous burden for people, especially without the resources to be able to move that snow. However, that is not something that we can mobilize state assistance for or municipal assistance for, right? On private property. However, on January 5th, we realized that our city facilities and our public facilities, we became concerned about the snow loads on those for those facilities, which triggered us to request that declaration. And the governor's office, Mayor and I were on the phone multiple times with the governor's office, and they were very responsive. So that is kind of the cadence of that, and we've been very engaged with the state on response. I want to talk a little bit about our avalanche risk, because avalanche risk has been a big part of this response. December 30th through January 7th, we issued daily avalanche alerts for people to remain alert if they live in a known avalanche slide path. And we really are using our Ready, Set, Go model for emergency management. And you may remember that from the GLOF event. And, the ready is be aware, know your evacuation route, have done your planning. The set is have your go bag packed, know where you're going to go for the night because an evacuation could be declared at any moment. And so we did evacuate known slide paths on January 8th. Because of the avalanche danger. We've been working with the Alaska Department of Transportation and CBJ Resources, staff resources on advising us on that avalanche risk. And as of yesterday, the avalanche risk is only remains in the Barron subdivision. So those homes that are in other slide paths are able to go back home. And the reason for that is there's been a lot of very small releases in those slide paths that relieve that pressure. In the Barron's Avenue, we've had one release that's gotten kind of in the Judy Lane area. However, there still remains a pretty large snowpack up there that we're concerned about. And so that evacuation notice will remain in effect until we either see some stabilization of that or release of that. And I'll talk about that a little bit in kind of what we expect for the future. And we did stand up a shelter at Centennial Hall, and I really want to thank our partners at Red Cross for staffing that. Our census at that shelter at its peak was just under 50 individuals, with the Barron's Avenue being the only path open now. It's down to about 12, and that shelter will remain open as long as we have an evacuation notice in effect, and we are not turning anyone away from that shelter. We also were required to evacuate the Thane warehouse cold weather emergency shelter for their safety. We had originally relocated those residents to Marie Drake. However, we quickly became concerned about the snow load on Marie Drake and did not feel like it was safe to overnight guests there. That was a decision on Friday had to be quickly made to change the location on that. And the only facility in CBJ that had the snow load cleared was Glacier Valley. And so the decision was made to locate those guests in the gym at Glacier Valley and limit access only to the gym. We had increased JPD patrols. We had cold weather shelter staff monitoring that event, and that was only for one night. We were able to, because of the avalanche risk was reduced, we were able to move those individuals back into the Thane warehouse. We had a thorough inspection, a thorough cleaning of the facility. But really for life safety of those residents, we had to make that decision, and we had to make that decision quickly. So I just wanted to explain that a little bit. As part of the avalanche risk, we have suspended service just on the Glacier Avenue section for Capital Transit. We do not want people to be waiting for the bus in that area. Our advice is you can transit through that area. It's just not good to, stand around for a long time. And so that's why until that evacuation order has been lifted, Capital Transit will not be making stops on Glacier Avenue. I want to talk a little bit back up and talk a little bit about snow removal since, last week, it was a snow event. It's turned into a little bit of a different event, but we did hire multiple contractors to help us get rid of snow. As you all have experienced, because you live in Juneau, there are not a lot of places to put the snow. And so this becomes a very labor-intensive exercise in taking snow blowers or loaders and filling up dump trucks and dumping that snow. And we do have a snow dump at Thane and a snow dump in the valley. We did receive permission from DEC to dump that snow into the channel under specific conditions. Making sure it's clean snow, it's not contaminated, just because of the sheer volume of that snow. So we thank the state for that. CBJ facilities were closed for most of last week because of our concern for safety and just the road conditions. I mean, there were two issues, right? One was the snow load on the roofs that we were monitoring, and the other was the dangerous snow conditions. So we asked city staff to work remotely, wanted to make sure we were still available to the public, but staying off those roads as much as possible. I'm pleased to say that all CBJ facilities were open this morning. All GSD facilities were also open with the exception of Mendenhall River, just because the crews clearing that roof needed a little bit more time to remove the snow from the sides of the buildings and just make sure that there were not students there that could, from a safety perspective, co-locating with that heavy equipment. Want to talk, a little bit about roofs in general, because of course snow load on roofs has been a major consequence of this storm event. When we did mobilize significant resources to help with some removal on roofs. Over 237 people shoveled 3 million pounds of snow from city facilities. And our insurance company brought in about 100 people, and in addition to engineers to do those assessments. So we had contracted engineers and city engineers doing continuous assessments of the snow load and also of the facilities to monitor stress on the facilities. They're probably still in some of the buildings right now doing the last of their documentation for insurance. We are working with the insurance company to have those expenses covered as part of an insurance claim for this event. That we're hoping that will be a way to mitigate some of the expense of this. In addition, we have private contractors mobilized to help clear fire hydrants. So that work is ongoing. We are working on demobilizing the external contractors that are doing snow removal on roofs. So like about 100 people flew in to help with that effort, also hired through local contractors. And we're working on demobbing that kind of outside effort, but keeping some of our local contractors employed to help make sure we get those fire hydrants clear. Really want to shout out to the public who has done a great job at helping clear fire hydrants and storm drains. Flooding has also been a concern with this event because of the ditches being full and the storm drains being blocked with ice. Oh, I'm sorry. Over 200 people were flown in, not 100 people. So, anyway, a lot of people. I was told an entire jetload of shovels was also flown in. So, turns out we don't have that many snow shovels in Juneau, especially during a snowpocalypse. 2 jets of snow shovels were flown in. So let's see. So flooding is something that we're still monitoring, and we've had some ponding in streets and things like that. We have asked the public to report any damage that they have, and we have a reporting tool online. If you go to the CBJ website, there's actually a lot of really good information. Shout out to our communications team for really doing an excellent job keeping the public informed. But there's an online reporting tool that we're asking the public to fill out if they have experienced damage. And part of that is we need to document damage as part of our disaster declaration and as part of our request for assistance. So that's why we are really asking people to give us that information. I want to talk a little bit about the weather moving forward. We are experiencing a slight lull in the rain. However, Tuesday night, we're expecting an increase in rain and increase in wind up to 60 miles per hour at those higher elevations, and also a decrease in the freezing point at elevation. All of that means is we're going to have rain on top of that snow, even at elevation. And so there's concern again for avalanche risk with that weather front coming in. We were able to procure an Abbey Monster. That is not a British band. I think it is a piece of equipment that monitors avalanches. And so we installed that in Douglas and pointed at Barron's, and we're calibrating it right now, but that will tell us the moment that we have an avalanche, even a very small one. And so that piece of equipment is going to be really critical in helping us understand when it's safe. We also will be flying a helicopter up there as soon as weather allows, and that will give us a lot more information. Just want to thank the state for their support on that equipment, because that is an expensive piece of equipment that we will be requesting public assistance for. Also, Alaska Airlines was incredibly helpful in getting it white glove treatment so that we could bring this Abbey Monster up on the plane and as a piece of carry-on luggage, and making sure that all of the gyrations of getting here worked well. So really want to thank them for their partnership in that. As we look into the next few days and look at that avalanche risk, we kind of have 3 different scenarios in front of us. One, I think the best scenario is that some of that precipitation at elevation and that wind would trigger multiple small slides on Barron's, and that would release pressure and allow residents to return to their homes. Another option that could happen, and this is, this is not an exact science, and we're operating with limited information, so I want to really emphasize the could, is that moisture could stabilize the snowpack, and then it would just kind of sit up there. Now, of course, the challenge with that is it's still sitting up there all winter, and once we get a helicopter up there and get some eyes on it, we'll have a lot better ability to know how stable that is. And then the third option, of course, is the least favorable, in that it triggers a large slide and we would have damage to homes. So that's really why we're continuing a high level of awareness, still have the EOC activated. Even though we're moving into recovery and longer operational periods, we will be keeping a close eye on that. Just want to thank all of our partners, Tlingit and Haida, Red Cross, U.S. Coast Guard, State of Alaska, State Emergency Operations Center. It's been Fortunately or unfortunately, we're a bit of a well-oiled machine in emergency response, and we've gotten tremendously positive feedback from the state EOC at how well our team interacts, how good our communication is. And what I tell them when I get that is it really starts at the assembly level because it takes resources, and you have provided that support and those resources for us to have a professional and a trained emergency management department. So I want to thank you for that. And with that, I'm happy, or Robert's happy, to answer any questions.
Who has questions? Mr. Kelly and then Ms. Wall.
Thank you. For the remaining avalanche hazard, a fourth option occurs to me. Is it safe to trigger an artificial avalanche?
No. That is not something we would do in an occupied slide path. Certainly DOT does do that on Thane because it's unoccupied, but the risk is too high.
Thank you.
Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is also about avalanche. In the unfortunate event of a urban avalanche, what does response look like to that? And do we think in Barron's, do we have a sense of are there people there if that does happen, or do we know kind of are people evacuated?
So I don't think we know if people have heeded our evacuation warning. Census at the shelter is mixed, so it's hard to tell from that alone. I mean, we're a tight community that has lots of friends and neighbors, and these are people who, probably have planned for that. We do have a well-practiced response through CCFR, but also through docks and harbors and engineering and public works. So for example, we have heavy equipment staged on both sides of the avalanche path in case we need to clear roads quickly. We also have marine transportation staged in case we have to do any type of transport by water instead of by road. I don't know if you want to add to that for our kind of response readiness.
No, I think that's good. The only thing I would add is that, what initial response will look like is CCFR will very likely be the first of our first responders on team. Their first task will be to establish safety, right? To create a perimeter, to do assessments around scene safety, and of course our avalanche advisor and experts at DOT will continue to be involved in helping those make assessments. Secondary avalanches are always a concern when we immediately respond, right, to an initial avalanche because they can and do happen. So that'll be an immediate assessment that we will make before sending in significant staff into an active avalanche zone.
Any more questions? I have a question too. I'm not the best at technology, so looking at our website, the reporting tool online isn't readily out there. So where would I find that? Been asked by somebody.
Yeah, so if you go to juneau.gov or juneau.org, juneau.gov, either one will work. There is on the front page a link to avalanche preparedness, and if you click on that tile, it's above the fold. That takes you to our CBJ avalanche page that talks about avalanche risk. You can see the CBJ storm damage reporting tool on that page alongside all of other avalanche information that we have out there.
Thank you for that. Any further questions by the assembly? Right. You want to go into the next item? Oh, wait, we did forget to thank partner. We forgot to thank Alaska Airlines. Oh, did you? Okay, well then we forgot to thank somebody. So with the rest of the assembly, we would like to do a standing ovation for all of our street crews and the state's street crews. And hopefully they are getting rest now, right? Good reserved rest, because they don't have to work 30 hours a day. Anyway, with that, you want to give a rundown very quickly of our week.
Thank you, Mayor Weldon. Now we'll pivot to our summer disaster. Mayor Weldon and I, along with President Peterson and his staff, spent most of last week in Washington DC advocating for a solution to both our flood mitigation and flood fighting and a long-term solution. And it was a very busy week. We had no less than 12 separate meetings. And they all had their unique security clearance requirements. So it takes a lot of time to navigate all that. I won't detail kind of everything that we talked about. I will note that at the legislative breakfast, we will have our lobbyist Katie Catchell here, and that will be a great time to do some follow-up because we, as you can imagine, each one of these meetings has follow-up that both we have to do and the agency has to do. And so it'll be a great time to update you on some of that. We met with the delegation separately, each member of the delegation, and they were all able to kind of bring their unique positions, I guess, to helping us solve this problem. Congressman Begich is on the committee that will approve the House side of the Water Resources Development Act. That's the legislation that we are working to get our long-term solution, our enduring solution authorized in. And then, of course, on the Senate side, Senator Sullivan is on that committee and has really played an integral role in mobilizing resources. And Senator Murkowski holds the position of being on the Appropriations Committee, and the WRDA bill, or Water Resources Development Act, is the authorizing legislation, but it still needs funding in an appropriations bill. So it's kind of like you pave the way by getting something named, a named project, and then you still have to find money for it. So, that I think we need our team down in DC, and our team is very strong, and we should feel very grateful for that. We did meet with a lot of committee staff, Office of Management and Budget, WRDA committee staff on both sides, and I would say staff's reception was a little bit more pessimistic. They're like, well, you don't have the 3-year study, and we only do things when we have a 3-year study. And so we are working through that challenge. And I do think that's going to be a challenge that requires political pressure. And I know our delegation is prepared to do that. May require multiple years of kind of positioning our project. We also met with the Forest Service, and they were very receptive to helping us with this project on Forest Service land. Talked about, how to strategize on NEPA and making sure all of those boxes were checked, and that due diligence was done in a way that didn't slow down the project. And so that was a great meeting. We met with HUD because HUD actually has been we received HUD money for phase 1 HESCO barriers through Tlingit and Haida. They applied for that money. There may be additional funding available through HUD. And then we also have a disaster recovery grant, $6 million of HUD money that's going through the state that we're really trying to be able to use towards maintenance and repairs of our HESCO barriers. We had 2 separate meetings with Army Corps of Engineers, really strategizing on not only phase 2, but also the long-term solution. And so I'll just say with phase 2, our very next step is going to be geotechnical work, because once we get that geotechnical work done, we'll have a much better idea of a cost estimate, and, the unknowns will be reduced. And so I think there's good hope that that we can find some funding either within the existing core budget or through congressionally directed spending to keep that project moving. So once, they're racing to this May deadline to have a technical report for WRDA, and then we need to just keep that project moving. So those were all really good meetings. We also met with U.S. Coast Guard on housing and preparation for the STORS. So that was good. It was really good to have President Peterson there, because he has some resources. The tribe has some resources too to bring to that conversation, and so that was really fruitful. And then we met with FEMA headquarters for permitting. We're really concerned about maintaining our NFIP status. That is what allows our constituents to get federal insurance for flood. And so just navigating that has been challenging, to say the least. And I think we made some really good progress. I will say, if there was one message that I think we heard, is this project is on their radar. Our meetings were with very high level people in the administration. Our meetings were very well staffed with lots of people. I mean, oftentimes we were meeting with like the assistant secretary of the department. So, Alaska's on their radar, and this event is on their radar. And I really do think we can thank the delegation for that, but also we can thank just our response and our communications team. And, we have shown the federal government and the state that, through phase one, our community is willing to put in the effort and do the work. And I think that has not gone unnoticed by our partners. So it was a productive trip, and we'll have lots more to report and lots more work to do.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Any questions on that? Ms. Hughes-Candies?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Be a little bad and say thank you for that report. And I just want to say in that same spirit, very appreciative of the folks in the flood committee communities themselves who are continuing to really lobby our delegation and just put appreciation their way as well, because I know they've been really organized and pushing for it.
Thank you for that. That is true. All right. Are you done with your staff reports? All right. With that, we'll go to public participation on non-agenda items, and we will start with people on Zoom. So will one of you bring over Max Rosen? And we have 11 people, so we'll do 2 minutes apiece. Mr. Rosen, you have been brought over. You have 2 minutes to talk. Please give us your name and area of town you live in, and then go ahead.
My name's Max Rosen. I live in the Barrens neighborhood. Last month, I shared some of my personal experience with libraries with you all. Today, I'm here on behalf of the Friends of the Juneau Public Libraries, where I serve as a board member to speak about our organization and to encourage your continued support of Juneau's public libraries. The Friends of the Juneau Public Libraries is a nonprofit organization made up of community members who believe strongly in the value of libraries. Many people know us through the Amazing Bookstore, which has been selling used books, puzzles, and games for decades, about as long as I've been alive. But our work goes beyond that. Our mission is to focus public attention on library services, facilities, and needs, to encourage community use of library resources, and to raise and donate funds to support library programs and collections, and to stand firmly for the freedom to read. The Friends exist to support and strengthen the library so it can best serve Juneau. That support helps ensure the library remains a welcoming, accessible, and well-resourced public space for the entire community. Public libraries serve a uniquely broad role. They support early literacy and lifelong learning, provide access to information and technology, and offer a stable, non-judgmental space open to everyone. Libraries serve families, students, educators, job seekers, elders, and people navigating difficult circumstances. They don't solve every problem, but they reliably connect people with resources, information, and opportunity. In a community like ours, libraries are one of the few truly shared civic spaces, places that bridge differences and serve the public good without barriers to entry. We recognize that this year's budget decisions are challenging. On behalf of the Friends of the Juneau Public Libraries, we urge you to continue recognizing the essential role our libraries play and to support them as a core community service which benefits all of Juneau. Thank you for your time and thank you for your continued support of Juneau Public Libraries.
Thank you, Mr. Rosen. Any questions from the assembly? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony tonight. Next, we have Heather Marlowe. Ms. Marlowe, please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Heather Marlowe. I'm out here in Ock Bay looking at Statter Harbor, which is open and ready for parking. What I wanted to talk about was some downtown development options, and to point out that there's been quite a bit of talk on the assembly about how to do downtown development, and there are about 10 properties downtown that are privately owned that have development profiles. And I am going to send you a letter that includes kind of a grid that shows the different properties and how many units that you could do on each one of them. But anyway, they all add up to about 250 units or more. And now we can add the Bill Ray Center to that grid as well. And there's a reason that those 10 or more property owners have not developed their property. And what I'm suggesting is that after receiving my letter that I'm going to send soon, that the assembly might want to do some sort of outreach to those property owners in the downtown area that can redevelop their properties for a total of, 250 units between the 10 of them. What prevents them from moving forward? What are their stumbling blocks? What are their fears? What are their holdups? And try and integrate some of this downtown development into private property. And there's a lot of focus on Telephone Hill, a lot of focus on what the city's going to do. I suggest we turn that around and put it out to the private property owners to really share what's holding them back from moving forward. And so anyway, heads up, so that's what I'm going to be talking about with you soon.
Thank you for that. Any questions for Ms. Marlowe? Ms. Wall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Marlowe, for that testimony. I think many of us probably strongly agree with your sentiment there. We've tried a bunch of things. We've put a lot of money into property tax, affordable housing fund. We've done property tax abatement programs, parking restrictions that we, loosened or removed. Are there other ideas that you have on, things that can move the needle on the private properties downtown?
Ms. Marlowe?
Yes, I have ideas. They would basically be programs similar to what you're talking about now. You have other programs to deal with housing, but that would, as I say, kind of have some sort of a project manager or some sort of a leader and go through and talk to these larger density properties, the owners of them, the managers of them, kind of get an index of what their challenges or their concerns are. And then kind of see if there isn't some, nuggets of truth to pull out of there and reprogram some money that you have for the development of that succinct area, which would include upzoning the Bill Ray Center. Right now, it's at a lower zoning than you may want it. You might want it to be at a higher zoning level so you can get more units. But what I'm saying is do targeted interviews with these property owners, come back, look at that information, and see if we can't do something, including a project manager, to help this group of property owners move forward.
Thank you for that. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, and we'll look forward to your letter.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Larry Talley. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
My name is Larry Talley, and I live in the Flats. Once again, I want to thank you for doing this difficult public service. I want to focus your attention tonight on the $5.5 million that you have appropriated for demolishing housing on Telephone Hill and the $3.5 million to relocate Dixon Street and install utilities for your newly vacant lots for a total budget of $9 million. You know from your own market analysis and from my pro forma that the Telephone Hill redevelopment concept C is financially infeasible. So all that is clear about your current direction is that you will demolish 13 housing units and create newly vacant lots. Which leads me to this modest proposal. Why don't you spend this money creating housing instead of demolishing housing? Here are 3 options. Using Juneau Economic Development Council's 2024 residential construction cost estimate, $9 million could provide 43 one-bedroom units of housing at CBJ-owned sites such as 450 Whittier or 2nd and Franklin. Option 2, using the cost of the recently completed Forget-Me-Not Manor Phase 3, $9 million could build 47 new units of subsidized housing if CBJ could provide a suitable site. Option 3, if committed to the Juneau Affordable Housing Fund, $9 million could fund $50,000 housing subsidies to 180 housing units. Note that with any of these 3 alternatives, you would also be ahead by the 13 existing housing units that you choose not to demolish. Please invest this $9 million where it will improve Juneau's housing situation. Please don't use this $9 million to demolish 13 housing units, erase the charming historical district, create newly vacant lots behind a chain link fence, and worsen Juneau's housing crisis. I'd also like you to support a seminar on infill and incremental development. The consultants who presented that seminar in Fairbanks said small developers depend on economies of resourcefulness and relationships. And that economic model is what makes small developers so adaptable in times of trouble. I think I could point out that there's two small developers, incremental developers here in the room, Mr. Brooks and Mr. Adams. So that is an idea to move the needle on those private properties. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Talley? Whoops, you have a couple questions. Ms. Hughes Candies and Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for being here, Mr. Talley, and for your testimony. My question is related to your first suggestion, the JEDC 2024 residential construction costs. So my question, I guess, is knowing that that cost is being pulled from 2024 and knowing that although we did not allocate $9 million, but you see the 5.5 million and the 3.5 million, and knowing that that is just for demolition and cleanup, do you still think that you could build that many units for $9 million?
Mr.
Well,
Talley.
Actually, I think that was an overestimate because the Juneau Economic Development Council's 325 a square foot was construction cost, not all-in cost. So you'd have to multiply that by, about 1.2 or 1.3 and then do the division. So say 35.
Okay.
But certainly 35 plus the 9 you don't destroy is way better than nothing.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Similar question, our model on Telephone Hills has been, prepare the land for private development. In the, options that you are proposing here, do you see do you see a role for private developers, or are you saying the city should build housing itself?
Well, I don't really expect you to take any of my 3 options, not that I would complain. But yeah, I think that it's more appropriate for private sector to own housing projects. But I am pointing out that you do have alternatives that would increase the housing stock in Juneau.
Any further questions? Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Talley. Next, we have Mr. Tangs. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
I'm Tony Tangs from downtown. The Telephone Hills struggle highlights how powerful the city manager is in our form of government. It started when, without any public input, former city manager Rory Watt put the assembly in a spell, apparently, and had him vote unanimously to make it a legislative priority to get $2 million from the state to tear down Juneau's oldest historical neighborhood, without one assembly member so much as raising an eyebrow in question about the improperness of the action. The only public consent Manager Watt conjured was an illusion, since it was buried in a 1% sales tax vote that had much necessary spending for harbors, community services, and childcare that no sane person could vote against. When the question was asked of him directly about the public actually having a say, the operative word Manager Watt told us all was, certainly. Certainly, the range of concepts presented to us would include a no-build option for Telephone Hill. And the only thing certain about it was it surely didn't happen. 500 people didn't vote in that survey, probably because their choice wasn't on the ballot. The one option to save the buildings and have infill apartments built was in a statistical tie with the chosen option C. We can infer that if saving the neighborhood had been on the ballot as an option, as Manager Watt had promised us, it would have slaughtered the competition. Manager Watt oversaw the installation of new water and sewer up onto Telephone Hill, suitable for the needs of his new development, well in advance of any assembly's official approval of it. What kind of manager does that? It's a cunning manager who knew he had the always accommodating assembly in the palm of his hand. Please take responsibility and prevent this mistake from happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Tangs? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Joshua Adams. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Absolutely. My name is Joshua Adams. I'm an incremental developer, which means I live where I work, and presently that's shoveling roofs. So I'm holed up at the Alaskan Hotel in room 212. You all should have a sheet with interior photographs of what's known to architectural historians as the Bosch Carrigan House. You see that? It was built in the decorated pioneer farmhouse style, the year after Alaska became a territory. It is the only house of its kind that I know of in Southeast Alaska. It was notably uncommon for a house this ornate to be built, except around that time in the early 20th century when exuberant craftsmanship often splurged on new homes for a hopeful territory. As you can see, this house was built with greater concern for detail than the basic pioneer farmhouse. This house was originally inhabited by Verna Carrigan, the daughter of Edward and Anna Webster. In case you do not know who Edward Webster was, he built Alaska's first commercial telephone company and ran it out of his home. And where was his home? There you go. Go up yourself and walk there to visit the Bosch Carrigan House on Juneau's very own Telephone Hill, the namesake of Edward Webster's legacy and that of his daughters. From the outside, you can see the ornamental scalloped siding on the gable ends, inside and out, unpretentious, but with high ceilings. The boxed cornices and meticulously crafted trim is unmatched in quality anywhere except perhaps the Valentine Building. It could become a museum, a residence, a walking tour for visitors from abroad, available for a limited time before your local government decides to spend $9 million of your tax dollars to turn it into an ashtray. Or maybe not. Not too late to change your mind, guys.
Any questions for Mr. Adams? Thank you for your testimony.
History is watching you.
Next, we have Catherine Fritz. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Catherine Fritz, I live in the Highlands. CBJ laws and policies are designed to safeguard against risk, especially when using public funds. A January 7th memo from Manager Kester about the relocation of City Hall demonstrates widely accepted fiduciary standards. It states, quote, Ordinance 2025-39 authorized the manager to purchase the Burns Building. However, I have not signed the final purchase and sales agreement. It is prudent to have a plan for funding, moving, and renovations before finalizing that agreement, unquote. The manager's decision not to execute the Burns Building purchase agreement was indeed prudent, since she didn't know the renovation costs when she presented the building purchase to you. Later tonight, now that you know the full costs, you will decide whether or not to add $6 million to the budget and go forward. Telephone Hill has not had this standard of care. Starting demolition and site preparation without a viable development plan is more than bold but risky. It is reckless and irresponsible. Large sums of public money are being spent to demolish structures and blast the hill without knowing anything about the extent of site work that will actually be needed. A significant public asset is being destroyed without analyzing options to avoid expensive demolition. To make matters worse, the CBJ is deliberately encouraging permanent damage to public assets by failing to provide basic protection of structures during this record-setting weather. The manager has stated that she is unwilling to do anything to reduce possible damage. This intentional negligence is unconscionable and defies the adopted ordinances that require protection of our historic resources. It's not too late to pursue a second approach for redevelopment. Concept D is a win-win. Increased housing without high amounts of public funding. It allows homes to be restored and new ones to be built by multiple owner developers. It eliminates the needs for costly demolition, hazardous abatement, and blasting. And it recognizes and honors
Need to wrap
the
up,
value
please.
of this neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Fritz? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Susan Clark. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
My name is Susan Clark. I live in 1109 C Street downtown, in the Flats. 3rd Street is the most significant. Can I start again? It's,
You just have to bend it down.
it didn't, the last time I did it, it didn't bend. All right, that's wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate the technology. All right. 3rd Street is one of the most significant roadblocks to adding any number of units to the narrow east ridge of Telephone Hill, and that is 3rd Street. 3rd Street is the only normal vehicular access to the hill. It is steep and narrow, 20 feet from sidewalk to sidewalk, and less than what would now be code. Entrance to 3rd Street is squeezed between the original state office building and the Spam can, so you can't widen it. You can enter halfway by going through the loading area of the state office building, which is often currently the preferred way, for me anyway. Going through that loading area is not an ideal safety route for the proposed 150 new residents. In talking today to the engineering project manager, Nick Druvenstein, he verified that there is no plan to widen 3rd Street, no plan to lower the top of it. In fact, the city has just spent approximately over $700,000 to rebuild 3rd Street in 2022 with the public intention to upgrade the utilities to the other homes. 3rd Street has always been very hazardous in winter. When there is snow and ice, residents have experienced close calls of being unable to stop, unable to break their slide before blindly shooting into the traffic of Main Street. The city cartographer just wrote me that the high point at the top of 3rd Street is 110 feet, descending down 34 feet to the gazebo. But this 34-foot difference in elevation is even greater as you go east from Main Street down to west at Willoughby. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Clark? Thank you for your testimony tonight. Next, we have Paige Bridges. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Paige Bridges, Carroll Way downtown. Good evening. I keep hearing you say we need housing downtown, more housing. We do need more housing, but there are other places for housing than Telephone Hill. But there's something else. We need a park. We need green space. We need a place where people can go and enjoy their lunch or just get out of the rat race for a few minutes. We have nowhere else for that downtown. And I Googled the value of parkland to cities, and there's tons of information on that. It increases productivity of the citizens, and I could go on and on. So, you know that this plan is almost impossible to fulfill. I'm going to read what the deputy mayor said. You know there's uncertainty, as there is in everything, I guess. Should we not find a developer who's able, willing to do 150 units or something up there, you know, with or without affordability? And that was your big thing, affordability. It's not like nothing would be built up there. It's just we'd have maybe to scale back our dreams, and we wouldn't get as many units or the affordability or something. It's not like there would be nothing built up there, or, you know, there would still be probably more housing than there is now. But that's just what happens if we have to dial things back. So I would, whether this is subconscious on his part, I think that he actually knows that he's telling the truth, that it's very, very likely that the plan will not work and we'll be stuck with a disaster. So he's talking about the dreams of the city. You're dreaming of tearing down Telephone Hill and putting up houses. Why do you have such a dream? People are furious about it. The people have dreams. We want a public park. We want the only historic area in Juneau to be a historic district. We want to save all the houses. We want to build beautiful little apartments in between. We want to save our history and our charm. And I'm going to send you again this pictures I sent of Telephone Hill. Some of you have seen it, some of you have not. But it's a treasure. God bless you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Bridges? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Bruce Simonson. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Evening, I'm Bruce Simonson. I live at the toe of Star Hill downtown. As you know, over 1,000 voters petitioned the assembly to pause the evictions on Telephone Hill and get a plan in place before they started the demolition. I have 5 simple questions which, when answered, may help voters and the Juneau taxpayers understand what the assembly's thinking about Telephone Hill. These questions, I think, could be asked directly to the city manager, but I think it would be appropriate for the assembly persons to ask the city manager, especially because the particular interest individuals on the assembly have. So for example, Assembly Member Atkinson, you're probably interested in the manager's answer to my first question, which is how many units of affordable housing will be built on Telephone Hill? You ran on that as your campaign. The second question, I think, is appropriate for Deputy Mayor Smith. I sent the handout PDF to you by email, and you might be able to get it. But there was a turnaround. Who were the developers who motivated the assembly to demolish Telephone Hill without first putting a viable plan in place? An RFI went out, and then magically, after some off-the-record conversations, 3 developers apparently persuaded the assembly to forego the usual RFI, RFP, RFB process to develop Telephone Hill. Who were those specific developers? We were not told, but we were told that unless the city went forward with demolition of the hill, they would not propose a project for Telephone Hill. Question number 3 for Assembly Member Wall as chair of the Finance Committee. I think you would be particularly interested in this question. At the end of the day, how much will it cost Juneau taxpayers to fully implement the Assembly's vision for Telephone Hill? We don't have a feel for that number, and we should have that before you start. Question number 4 for Assembly Member Brooks, with your extensive experience and interest in construction trades, what are the costs and benefits of keeping the houses on Telephone Hill as they are? And finally, question number 5 for the mayor is, how do we know that the assembly and the assemblies and the community's vision for Telephone Hill will be implemented after these public properties have been retransferred to the private sector? What tools do we have? In the handout, I have specific questions which
Bruce,
I would ask you to ask.
Simonson,
Yes, thank you.
You're done.
I would ask you
You're
to
way over your
ask the
Any questions for Mr. Simonson? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mary Ann Keene. I'm sorry, Mary Alice McKean. Please state your name much better than I did and the area of town you live in for the record.
Hello, I'm Mary Alice McKean and I live in downtown Juneau. I provided copies of my written testimony, which is basically what I'm going to say, except I had to shorten it. The Assembly approved the demolition of Telephone Hill to go forward with the Telephone Hill redevelopment project. That project, as repeatedly described to the city, is up to 155 units with 31 units of affordable housing. That is why I asked the Assembly at the December meeting to tell the public if the Assembly or the city manager had asked a local architect to give the city a project design for Telephone Hill, which created only 87 housing units? And I'm still asking that question. As I understand it, the submission was from Paul Volkers, a local architect, for 87 units in 2 buildings. One building will have high-end condos. I don't know whether there will be any affordable units. I believe that Mayor Weldon, Assembly Members Steininger and Hall, and the city manager know the details of Mr. Volker's written document. I think the public should know it too. Why? First, it's further evidence that the project, as repeatedly described to the public, will not happen. 2, 87 units is a lot less than 155. It is 44% fewer units. 3, it means that the city must now compare demolition of Telephone Hill with other approaches that yield 87 units. 4, with only 87 units, the development gap in that project is likely to be much higher. What will the rents or purchases be in that project? Will a significant number of units wind up as Airbnbs? This entire project is another Ridgeview in the making, and you are aware how resentful people were as to how that turned out. Please analyze concept D, which is selling the houses and adding more houses through incremental infill. Please use the public's money in a cost-effective way. Thank you for your work on the assembly. And I just have to say that the deputy mayor looks positively benign from his remote location. It must be the background.
Anyway, thank you for your testimony. Any questions for Ms. McKean? Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it'd be a question for the manager for clarification on information. For the option that we're going with, how does that ensure that we have some control over the affordability of the units as compared to going with something like concept D or the incremental info?
Mr. Brooks, typically this is the time that we get from the public. When the public is done, you can ask that later. This is public testimony time.
It was for clarification on something that she had asked in the public testimony.
Remember, this is not the time that we answer their questions. This is the time we hear from them in testimony. So
Thank
let's
you.
hold your question for a little bit. Thank you.
Is that proper at the end of the meeting? I mean, I'd waited that.
It is proper at the end of the meeting,
Okay.
but we could probably make an exception,
Okay.
but we'll wait till public testimony.
I'm sorry if I was out of turn. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Next, we have Angie Min Bayer. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Angie Minbeyer, resident of downtown Juneau. I am 34 years old and I've been living here since 2015. Over the last decade, I've witnessed many friends and people relocate out of Juneau, mainly due to inaffordability and lack of year-round jobs. And I thank the city for aiming to increase affordable housing to retain young families, but tearing down Telephone Hill is not the solution. Not only will it cost $9 million taxpayer dollars to demolish and clean up the site, but also it will cost for the developers at least 1.5 times more to build up that hill than on flat surface. So at that point, the houses will not be affordable. And what if what if the city sells the parcels as is and use that income plus the 9 million to do infills and rebuild or redesign buildings like St. Anne's? Given the current emergencies and the summer flood threats, we know that these are already deterring families away out of Juneau. So please reconsider your priorities and course of actions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. McFire? See none, thank you for your testimony. And that concludes public testimony on non-agenda items. Mr. Brooks, do you want to ask your question real quickly before we move on?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for the people listening at home and in the crowd here, what metrics of the option that we're going with for the redevelopment allow us to control the level of affordability of units compared to an alternative option like option D?
Madam Manager.
So the Assembly has kind of decided through the Telephone Hill Place Guide of a target of 20% affordability. As I've stated many times before, the more control you want to exercise over a project, the more levers you will need to use to incentivize that. So I can't answer how the Assembly is going to do that. I think it would depend on the proposals that developers submit, but there are mechanisms that you could use to guarantee affordability, through the project agreement, deed restrictions, and we do that with different developers when we're looking at, I think of like Peterson Hill and developing there, and there's timelines that we put on developers and those types of restrictions. So generally speaking, the more restrictions you put, the, kind of less flexibility the developer has. So that's going to be a balancing act that you will need to weigh as the project progresses.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Manager, and I will put on the record that we have ideas from many people in the community about what to do at Telephone Hill. We've had many meetings with several of you. Mr. Volkers also had a vision. We did not ask him for his vision. He came and met with us. It is his choice to share his document or not. It is not an official city document whatsoever. So with that, we will move on to the consent agenda. Are there public requests for consent agenda changes other than ordinances for introduction? Seeing none. Is there any Assembly requests for consent agenda changes? Ms. Hughes-Gannings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would pull transfer number, serial number T2606 from the consent agenda for discussion.
All right, thank you. We will put that as the first item on the public hearing. Is there any more changes to the consent agenda from the Assembly? With that, we will go to the Assembly for action. Ms. Hughes-Gannings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the consent agenda and ask unanimous consent.
As amended.
As amended.
Any objection to that? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Let's take 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam
Is
Mayor.
that long enough?
Yeah.
Okay. We are back in session. So next we have public hearing. We have moved item D from our consent agenda to the first item for public hearing. So we'll go to Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Transfer request 2606, a transfer of $2,586,040 from various CIPs to CIP D12-112 Municipal Building.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Manager.
Thank you. So this transfer consolidates the two City Hall CIPs. One is City Hall and one is New City Hall into the Municipal Building CIP. Then it also transfers from a number of different open CIP project accounts that we brought to the Assembly at the Assembly Finance Committee meeting that we thought were not as kind of ready for development in the near future and would be better spent on the needed $6 million that we needed that hadn't yet been appropriated for purchase and renovation of the Burns building. So that's why you see a little over $20 million request, is because in addition to the already appropriated funds, we have those additional transfers. And let's see, and I recommend the approval of this transfer.
Thank you, City Manager. Ms. Hughes Candies. Excuse me. Seeing there are no members of the public here, unless the young lady in the back would like to speak to this, we'll go to the Assembly. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will keep this fairly concise because I think it's fresh in our minds from Finance Committee. We had a good chance to dig into that a little bit and the various CIPs at that meeting. I had some time over the weekend and in the days in between to think about this, and when we moved this to the full Assembly, I did not vote no, and that really just, sometimes you have a vote that just really sits with you, and this is one of those votes to where, for me, one of these transfer items, I'll go ahead and make the amendment, and then I'll be
Thank you for
shorter.
making an amendment to
Yes,
two.
thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to make an amendment to this transfer to T2606. 3 up from the bottom. The CIP line D12-100 Lemon Creek Multimodal Path. I would like to delete this from the transfer, and I would like to direct the manager to allocate general funds of $525,000 to CIP D12-112, which is the municipal building CIP. And the philosophy behind that is just simply that I see that it is not a necessarily mature line item yet with the Lemon Creek Multimodal Path, but I think it is very important that we keep moving forward in that project, that we keep putting city funds and supporting through that, because by not doing that and only waiting till grants, when I look at our historic spending patterns and how they play out at various parts of town, what it does is it further enforces those. So areas in town where we might have spent less historically, we continue to spend less because that's just sort of the way a city works. So for me, I can't be in support of that. So that is why I propose that amendment. And I think our general fund is there to support the goals and the projects that we want to support. And I think we don't just give up on this particular CIP because the federal administration changed.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. Any objection? Mr. Smith, are you objecting?
Yes.
All right. Would
For,
you?
for a
would you-
question, I guess.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so say Ms. Hughes Candy's amendment passes, that doesn't impact this transfer. It'd still just be approved and those funds would then be transferred. Then the second piece of her amendment of, directing the manager essentially backfill from general fund would come through as an ordinance. Is that right?
That is
looking
Correct.
to the attorney.
That's correct.
All right, are you maintain your objection?
I have another question, actually. I have a few, actually.
I'm looking around and see if anybody else has anybody. Any further objection? Mr. Steininger.
Objecting for a question, but I suspect it might be along the lines that Mr. Smith was asking. We were going to have a companion ordinance that was discussed at finance. I understand that just has gotten delayed due to, everything else that you guys are all working on. Because we voted not to backfill the funding for the multimodal pass in finance, does that limit us from being able to take that up once that ordinance gets to us for introduction? Could we get a second bite at that apple and have that discussion then, thereby not slowing down this transfer and the money needed for the renovations?
Madam Attorney.
Thank you. So the short answer is yes, we can do this in a way that won't slow it down. I think from a more technical perspective, you would probably actually get two ordinances that would come through. They would be separate because they're separate. They were separate motions with separate votes. So that's how it would come through. But we would do them. I would work with Ms. Flick and you would get that from finance on, I believe the 9th is the target for intro.
If it's a follow-up, not a different question.
It follows. So just to make sure that I understood correctly, thank you. So Ms. Hughes-Scandy's amendment won't slow down the ability of the manager to do the renovations.
That's right. It will not.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, nobody else is raising their hand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could someone remind me of the investment this assembly made, or I guess the previous assembly made, into the Zontakihini playground and that total amount, just to show the investments we're making in that part of town?
Mr. Smith, I actually asked this question today, and the initial investment was 750,000, but we've added on to that, so it's a total of 850,000.
Very good. And then I have another question, if you permit me.
Anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Doesn't this project, as designed or proposed, doesn't it actually kind of bypass Lemon Creek? And that it isn't like, it's interact. I guess I'll just maintain my objection. I can speak to it should I do that now?
Go ahead.
Very good. Thank you. We voted on this already. I appreciate Ms. Hughes-Scandy's desire in this project. There's still $1 million in the CIP. As I was answered in previous question about the DZ playground, we're making further investments into this part of town. And this project does actually just bypass Lemon Creek. We got to watch our general fund. I will oppose the amendment for a number of reasons, which I just stated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anyone else? Okay, I will also object. I appreciate Mrs. Hughes-Scandy's bringing this back up. But that's why I checked. We just spent $850,000 in this area for an area playground, and this project still has money in it, and it has dropped to number 12 on our assembly list or priority list. So different assemblies have different priorities. I would agree with Ms. Hughes-Scandy that this area of town is underserved, but I don't know that the bike path will do that. The state just did a renovation of that road, and there is some ability to drive a bike on it, not as much as we would do if we did it, but the project's not dead. So I'm very keen on keeping our general fund as unrestricted as we possibly can until we get through the budget. So I wouldn't say that after the budget cycle that we wouldn't put money back in there, but right now I'd like to protect the fund balance. All right, Madam Clerk, we have a motion and we have objection. Please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the amendment to transfer 2606 with the deletion of CIP D12-100 Lemon Creek Multimodal Path and directing the manager to transfer 525,000 to D12-112 for the Muni Way Building CIP. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Smith.
No.
Mr. Steininger.
Yes.
Madam Mayor.
I'm the last. Thank you very much.
Ms. Wall.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Ms. Adkisson.
No.
Mr. Brooks.
No.
Madam Mayor.
No.
Motion fails with 4 yeas and 4 nays.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do you want to take another stab at it, Ms. Hughes Candies? A different funding source or not?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the offer. I did not find another funding source. I had too many meetings today in my day job, but appreciate the offer.
We still have time, it sounds like.
Sure. Misunderstanding that, but failing that and failing anyone else making an amendment, then I think it would be proper to move this transfer T2606. Is that correct?
Yes, go back to the original motion, yes.
Okay.
Are you moving it?
Sure. Yes, that's my motion. I move the Assembly adopt transfer serial number T2606, and I object.
All right, thank you for that. Any further objection? Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I object for the purpose of a question and possibly an amendment.
Go ahead. What's your question?
How much of the 20 million is the purchase price of the building?
Madam Manager.
So the purchase price is 9.3 million with 2.7 million going into a fund for maintenance for the building. So a total of 12 million.
Okay, I would make or have an objection for the purpose of an amendment.
Go ahead.
I would amend transfer request 2606A to transfer funds from CIP D12-108 and D12-102 and leave the remaining funds in their accounts.
To where?
You're going to have to ask that because I have no idea what you're trying to do with that amendment.
And instead of 20,586,040 with sale tax from various CIPs, I would amend that we only pull 16.1 million from capital improvement D12-108 and D12-102, leaving the remaining funds in their accounts, and I can speak to that amendment.
Go ahead.
The amount of $20 million is just, I can't support that in good conscience. It's not what the taxpayers voted for, and even the funds that were initially set aside has left a lot of the community feeling very disparaged and unheard. And that is the reason that I would object with this amendment.
Thank you for that. So now we're on the amendment, Mr. Brooks' amendment. Who's objecting? Okay. I see several hands. We'll start with Ms. Adkisson, then go to Ms. Hughes Candies, then Mr. Standinger, and then Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to object to this amendment. I made no secret about the fact that I was not supportive of us purchasing the Burns Building for our new city hall. But we as an assembly have agreed to move forward with the purchase of that building. And it is the course of action we've taken. And that's something that now, as an assembly member, I'm really committed to making sure works and is a good, positive space for our city employees. We have a responsibility to our city employees, and we have chosen this as our course of action. Things are not cheap, and construction is difficult, but it is unacceptable and disgraceful the conditions that we have our city employees in. Especially, like, we see what all the work they've done for us and all the work they do for our community. And if we're going to retain them, if we're going to give them a good quality of life, we need to invest in them. And I have full faith in our city staff that they have looked and done their best to make this as cheap as possible. But we have to care for our city employees. And though I didn't like the purchase of this building, I am in full support of making this a good place for our employees. So I will stringently object to this.
Thank you, Ms. Agason. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll echo much of what Ms. Atkinson said. You know, I think everybody knows this was nobody's perfect building. This is nobody's perfect price. Certainly, I think I hear what Mr. Brooks is saying, but I'm also well-versed at this point in the current building environment, in the current purchasing environment, in the current tariff environment. Costs continue to escalate and escalate, and it leaves us where we are. And so I can't support this because there is no alternative. The alternative is there's no workable alternative that I have heard. And so we need to find the solution. And this is frequently where we find ourselves, which is just choosing the best of our least favorite choices. And so I would echo Ms. Atkinson. I'm committed to making this work. So I'm not thrilled about it, but I think we need to put the money in to renovate it.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. Mr. Steininger.
So to add, I guess, to the previous two speakers, you know, I stand with them that, you know, moving to the Burns Building is not my first choice. I ultimately voted against it in our last vote, but remodeling the building now before we move in is the most cost-effective way to do this. If we don't spend any money on remodeling, if we don't spend any money on fixing things before we move in, we'll just have to do it when we discover the deficiencies in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years, at some point. And at that point, it will be more expensive because we will have to go find temporary places for people to sit, find ways to move people out, do it while we have employees in there. And that will be harder and more expensive. And so now that we have chosen this direction, as pointed out, you know, we have to do it at least as right as we can afford to do. And, you know, this proposal isn't even getting it to the point where, you know, the most ideal municipal building that we could have, but it is getting it to a municipal building that treats our employees with respect, that is a functional building that won't require us to shuffle around and move again in just a couple of years just to tear up, run down carpet and paint walls and replace furniture. You know, these are things that we need for an effective government. And, you know, so while I don't like moving out of the downtown core, I don't like moving and being roommates with another agency in a building, you know, it is the cheapest option that we have been able to find through this entire process. And so I, you know, have to sit here and support doing the work that we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Objection for the purpose of the question. If this amendment were to pass, like what would this do, Madam Manager, in terms of the process of buying the Burns? Anyway, what would this do to the process of buying and moving into the Burns Building as the municipal building?
Madam Manager.
Thank you for that question. I would seriously reconsider, and bring you that question of reconsidering, like, if there's not funds to buy cubicles for employees, and do those renovations. I mean, obviously, there's a point where it's probably not worth moving in there. And I'm not saying that, I don't know where that point is, but it certainly seems like with that reduction, you have $2.5 million, which maybe gets your tech in there and pays for movers.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Smith?
Yes, and I'll maintain my objection. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
Thank you. I won't rehash everything that's been said. I think I agree with actually to some point with every speaker who has spoken, including one point that Mr. Brooks made, which was that we need to respect the will of the voters. But to that point, the voters rejected borrowing money to build a new city hall, and that's not what we're doing here. So I am supportive of this project. I believe it represents an added efficiency in our city government. And I support the funding that would be transferred from other accounts in order to pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Ms. Wall, you're the only one that didn't speak. Do you want to speak? Okay. I will also object. Our EOC met in this room. They started in sweaters, and by the end of their time here, they were in tank tops. It is so hot in this room that you can see fans blowing on all of us. This is the state of our city facilities, and that's not even counting the building where there's leaks and they can't flush toilets. We have to find a solution. We have looked under every rock to find a cheaper solution. There is no cheaper solution. And you just heard Madam Manager say that we can't move into the building with at least some renovation. They have made their renovations as little as they possibly can, but at some point we have to look out for our employees and at the same time do the best we can fiscally for the voters. So with that, I will maintain my objection. Madam Clerk, you have a motion and an objection. Please call the roll.
Mr. Brooks, if you wouldn't mind restating your motion for me.
Yes. For transfer request 2606A, I would amend it to request a transfer of 16.1 million from CIP D12-108 and D12-102 to to capital CIP 12112 municipal building, and ask for unanimous consent.
Mr. Brooks, that doesn't add up to the 60 million. That's only 14.586. So they're confused of where you're getting the 60 million.
Sorry, that was pulled from the fiscal year 25. Okay. No, I got it here. I was like, I move that we transfer $14,586,040 from CIPD 12-108 and D12-102 and transfer it to CIPD 12-112 municipal building and ask for unanimous consent.
All right. Do you have any more questions on the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No more questions.
All right. So we have motion for an amendment and objection. Please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For Mr. Brooks's amendment to transfer 2606 to pull D12-108 and D12-102. Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
No.
Deputy Mayor Smith,
No.
Ms. Wall,
No.
Ms. Adkisson,
No.
Mr. Steininger,
No.
Ms. Hughes Candies,
No.
Madam Mayor.
No.
Motion fails, 7 nays, 1 yay.
So now we're back to the original motion. Any further amendments? Seeing none, any objection? Mr. Brooks?
I object because it's too much money.
Thank you for that. Madam Clerk, we have a motion and objection. Please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For transfer request 2606, a transfer request of $20,586,040. Ms. Hughes Candies,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks,
No.
Mr. Steininger,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Wall,
Yes.
Ms. Adkisson,
Yes.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Motion carries 7 yeas, 1 nay.
Thank you for that. So now we will go back to item number one on public hearing. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance 2025-01, lowercase b, uppercase x, an ordinance transferring 200,000 from the general fund to the Marine Passenger Fee Fund for unused federal staff support related to tourism, funding provided by state marine passenger fees.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Manager.
If you recall, back at the beginning of the tourism season, when we were concerned about staffing shortages and cuts to the U.S. Forest Service, we asked for a transfer of $200,000 in marine passenger fees to use to help mitigate the impacts of that so we could keep our visitor center open, given the economic engine it is in the community. You said, we'll give it to you, but please try not to use it. And I'm pleased to report that both our partner agencies like Tlingit and Haida and private contractors were able to pull together and make this season work. So now we just need to return that 200,000 back to the Marine Passenger Fund.
Thank you, Madam Manager. There's no one signed up to testify on this, so we'll go back to the Assembly. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the Assembly approve ordinance 2025-01 BX and ask for unanimous consent.
Any objection? Seeing none, that motion passes. Item number 2, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance 2025-44, an ordinance amending the commercial passenger vehicle fine schedule to include fines relating to vehicle standards.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Manager.
Now, this is a housekeeping ordinance. We realized that there were a couple of fine amounts for violations that we missed when this was amended in June of 2025. So I recommend you take public testimony and adopt this ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Manager. There's no member of the public signed up for this ordinance, so we'll go to the Assembly. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that we adopt ordinance 202544, ordinance amending the commercial vehicle passenger fine schedule to include fines relating to vehicle standards, and I ask for unanimous consent.
Any objection? Seeing none, that motion passes. Next, we have unfinished business. Madam Manager? Is that coming to you? Madam Clerk, you could read the title.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. FY 2027 CBJ Legislative Capital Priorities List.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Manager.
This resolution formally adopts your legislative capital priority list. This is a process that begins in the fall and goes through lots of public comment and iterations. And once you pass it tonight, we will share it with both our state and federal delegation. I recommend you adopt this priority list and full report.
Thank you, Madam Manager. There are no members of the public that wish to speak to this ordinance. Or this list, so we will go back to the Assembly. Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the Assembly adopt the FY 2027 CBJ Legislative Capital Priorities List and the accompanying report, and I ask for unanimous consent.
Any objection? Seeing none, our list is adopted and our list is in the packet if anybody's interested in that. I don't see anything under new business and we already did our staff reports unless we have any further staff reports. So we'll bring us to the mayor's report. As Mrs. Kester said, we spent last week at Washington DC meeting many people. Truly appreciate the work of our lobbyists there who got us 5 meetings a day, all in different parts of town. So we spent a lot of time racing back and forth. And thank you to Madam Manager for having an excellent slideshow. As everybody said, her slideshow was very compelling. And so thank her for all that hard work. Appreciate that. And then before then, I was shoveling along with the rest of you. So I didn't get to do much, but the only thing that I would like to add, and this will catch some people by surprise, is I asked the attorney this morning to draft legislation to make the Eagle Crest an advisory board rather than an empowered board. And the reason I did this was the executive director just resigned, as well as the chair of the board resigned. As we know, they're having major financial issues, and I just think the city needs to have more oversight over what's happening to Eagle Crest. And I think the government is standing in its way right now, and it needs to be changed. And this action has nothing to do against the board. Thank all their members, especially Brandon, for stepping up to chair it in these turbulent times. And it is nothing against the staff. I just think it's time for us to have more hands-on approach until we decide what to do with it. So that is my report, and we'll go to our committees. Mr. Smith, Committee of the Whole.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. We didn't have a committee of the whole since our last regular assembly meeting. Should I talk about the next one or should I wait till we go down the line?
Go ahead and talk about the next one because they have.
Sure
one more.
thing. Yep, thanks. So our next meeting is 2 weeks from today. Our next committee of the whole is 2 weeks from today. You know, the manager does a good job of signaling to us in the Friday report upcoming agenda topics. I'll flag 2 for you today. One is the Douglas West Juneau area plan. We sent that to the COW during our last assembly meeting. Would just encourage folks to read that, read emails, whatever. We have a lot to cover in the COW on the 26th, so we'll be allowed to cover all COWs, but so I hope that we can, you know, take amendments if we need to, and then try to keep that plan moving. And of course, just a reminder for that plan, as well as the comp plan and other plans, you know, there's just a lot of public process. People, you know, we can change it. It's our purview. But just know that those have gone through like extensive public process. So consider that as we're making amendments. The other thing I wanted to flag for that 26th COW, we'll be going over the new assembly goals and implementing actions. The new deadline to submit those is a week from today, so January 19th. So the team has time to process and get those ready for the COW on the 26th. So 119 have your revised goals implementing actions that we discussed at the retreat back to Mr. Barr. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Smith, thank you for that report, but I believe the 19th is a holiday, so let's aim for the 20th.
Fine.
And I'm sure you can look through your emails to see what you forgotten that you signed up to rework. So anything further on the Committee of the Whole, Mr. Smith?
No, Madam Mayor, thank you.
Finance, Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We were all at finance last week, so I won't recap that. Our next official finance committee meeting will be the first Wednesday of February. You know, we're going to meet this week to start talking about the agenda. We may have our audit review by then. Potentially, we will hear from a few other partner agencies on their planned budgets. I'm hoping we'll hear from the deferred revenue or the leaky revenue, lost revenue team at that meeting. And we will be planning a joint assembly empowered board meeting for for the end of January, that will be kind of a partly finance, partly regular assembly meeting to discuss them. So I can't remember what we decided on what to call it, but it's part of the budget process as you all will remember. That's all I got.
There you go. And we are going to see each other a lot during this budget process. So keep your sense of humor. With that, lands, housing and economic development, Ms. Huskandy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Lands, Housing, and Economic Development met December 1st. If you missed it, we had JEDC there. They were there to talk about economic indicators and the implications of large infrastructure projects on the community. So they talked about some of those cruise ship development, some further along, obviously, than others, some aspirational at this point, and the potential impact from that. We also talked about Duran Construction and a property donation for some parkland. An interesting process, something different. You can go back and check that packet if you're interested. And as is tradition, we talked about the CBJ Christmas tree and firewood harvesting policy and went over the maps of where you can do that.
Thank you, Ms. Huskandy. Public Works, Ms. Atkinson.
We have not had a Public Works meeting since our last assembly meeting, and the Visitor Industry Task Force meets for the first time later this, well, the first official time later this week, so I do not have anything to report.
Thursday at 5:30 to be specific. Human Resources, you have some appointments for us. And finally, we get to acknowledge our young lady in the audience.
Yes. All right, we have 3 sets of appointments that I would like to move on behalf of the Human Resources Committee. The first is I would like to move the reappointment of Douglas Salick to the Board of Equalization for a full term running January 1st, 2026 and ending December 31st, 2028, and ask for unanimous consent.
Any objection? Seeing none, they're appointed.
Thank you. We do have Ms. Shoup in the background, so and early congratulations to you, perhaps depending on how the assembly votes. All right. I move that we appoint Laurel Shoup and Michael Beasley to the Douglas Advisory Board for terms beginning immediately and ending September 30th, 2028, and ask for unanimous consent.
Any objection? Seeing none, they are appointed. Congratulations.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the Emergency Planning Committee, I would move that we appoint to the State of Alaska Emergency Response Commission the appointment of Teresa Boss, firefighter EMS Seat 3, Travis Wolf, firefighter EMS Seat 3A, and Britta Tonenson, American Red Cross, Seat 7, all to the Local Emergency Planning Committee for full terms beginning January 1st, 2026 and ending December 31st, 2028. And please, unanimous consent.
The only correction I think is Teresa Ross. You said Boss.
Yes, thank you, Teresa Ross.
All right, any objection? Seeing none, they are appointed. Anything further from Human Resources?
That's all I have. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any other city committees that I'm forgetting? Mr. Brooks? Are you chairing a city committee? Okay, thank you. Now we're going to liaison reports, committees and questions. Ms. Huskandy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks for queuing us in on the Eagle Crest. I had similar thoughts, so I'm looking forward to that conversation. I've also just been shoveling primarily, and I just wanted to give a quick preview, which I think we've talked about before, but just in the interest of things to keep track of, I'm going to be meeting with the Lands Director, but some of the things that he and I have discussed on the phone, in addition to the short-term rentals, which the mayor has already given voice to here, we are also chatting about slotting into the beginning of the year, looking at a potential model of a fees for blighted lots. There have been plenty of assembly members over the years who have wanted to do some kind of blight tax or something like that. But the way Title 29 is right now, our hands are tied until the state makes a change. Recently, Anchorage did something that's more using a fee structure, doing some outreach to Anchorage to see if it's been successful at all, but potentially talking about that, as well as talking about the concept of approved designs, which is something that some communities do when they have an ADU program, such as we do. It's just another way to bring down the cost of someone who might want to add an ADU because it's a plan that already works within the city's zoning code. So I just wanted to get you guys excited about, if you're not on the Lands Committee, things you might want to come to the Lands Committee for. Otherwise, I don't have a whole lot to report, except to say I will also be going to Washington, D.C., but not until February, to attend the National Association of Counties Legislative Conference, which is always informative, and I will bring back anything that is of use to Juneau.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. I think we'll all be attending Lands. Ms. Wall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The PrAC is not meeting in January, so I do not have a report from them. The airport board met this last Thursday, and they had intended on finalizing their budget at that meeting. They did not get that. They did not get to that objective, but I expect they will in the next few weeks. If you may remember, they've been working through a new fee model to basically figure out how they want to balance all the different fees that they charge at the airport, and, you know, have a proposal for raising fees. And there's been some back and forth with industry and tenants and others to come up with that. So it sounds like they're not quite there yet, but they're one of the groups we'll be scheduling a joint meeting with. So we'll get a chance to hear more about that there. I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The last meeting that the school board had was discussing the progress with the playground project, the next steps with continuing funding from other sources, and essentially like what's for sure getting done at this point is, you know, regardless of continued funding or not, they're going to get the safety surface down and have a lot of it prepped for equipment to be installed at other phases or later dates. The Commission on Sustainability met and discussed new member appointees and the restructuring of the board, and then kind of direction about the types of things that they want to charge and attack on having less resources than they had in previous years. And then I still haven't had a meeting with the local emergency planning committee, but on Wednesday, there will be a meeting at 12 in the UAS Rec Center, room 116, or you can attend on Zoom.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Ms. Atkinson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With all the fun snow we had, there were no meetings for any of my liaison appointments, but the Travel Juneau Annual Retreat is coming up shortly, so I'm excited to attend that. And as you pointed out, I was not specific. The Visitor Industry Task Force is meeting this Thursday at 5:30 p.m. in the chambers.
Thank you for that. Ms. Steininger, no, sorry, Mr. Steininger. Sorry, it's getting late for me. It's been a long day.
It has been. I want to first just make a comment and say, you know, through the last couple of weeks of just being out shoveling, the number of just complete strangers that I've seen helping other complete strangers dig their cars out, dig out storm drains to get the water running has been very heartwarming, despite being very cold. So I just want to say we have a community that comes together in times of need, and that is, very pleasant to see beyond, just all the city staff and the EOC. We also have, citizens out there that are helping each other and getting people through this. And I think that deserves some acknowledgement. My liaison reports, I missed the SRRC committee. It got rescheduled a couple of times. They'll be meeting again tomorrow at noon. Eagle Crest met last week. It was a fairly eventful meeting. The chair stepped down for health reasons. Brandon Cullum was elected the new chair of the committee, and the general manager submitted his resignation. Aaron, oh geez, I'm gonna forget.
Lupro.
Thank you, Lupro, sorry. Aaron Lupro will be serving as interim manager. Craig Simmons will stay on to assist her for right now up to a month in order to kind of ensure that there's a good transition. And the meeting, aside from those, changes, a meeting, there's a lot of discussion over this kind of the state of Eagle Crest this season. If you've been following, it's been, a little bit of a turbulent season. They've had a lot of maintenance issues that kind of come as, 50-year-old ski area with a lot of old infrastructure, creating a lot of maintenance issues on top of pretty extreme weather conditions. We've had the avalanche watch, for all of downtown Juneau, and up there, it's incredibly challenging snow conditions that has created a little bit of difficulty in being able to open the upper mountain on top of the maintenance issues through the Ptarmigan chairlift. So a lot of discussion over that, a lot of communication with the public over, ensuring that they're able to communicate with the public in a more satisfying way going forward, because there's been some, kind of misunderstanding of why the upper mountain was closed, and a little bit of discussion about that at the meeting. So a lot happening in the Eagle Crest world. You heard Mayor Weldon's announcement, and so looking forward to making some positive changes to make sure that that entity can have, the tools that they need to manage the mountain and work through some of these issues, and make sure we retain that kind of vital resource that keeps a lot of people in our town. So looking forward to the discussion as we go forward with Eagle Crest.
Thank you, Mr. Steininger. We are missing Ms. Hall, so we have Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Southeast Alaska Solid Waste Authority, I have not heard anything from, so we still have not met. The Juneau Commission on Aging last met a day after our last assembly meeting, also on the 16th. One item of discussion was capital access and the transition to the new provider, and a little bit of rough edges in that transition, but it sounds like the owner of the new provider is willing to come and actually attend their next meeting and have discussions about what they could do better. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. The Downtown Business Association hasn't met since our last meeting. They will be meeting on Wednesday. I attended the Alaska Municipal League Legislative Committee on the 9th. It was just a good introductory session to kind of get an idea of what we're going to be looking forward to this legislative session. There's going to be meetings every Friday for the rest of the legislative calendar. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My liaison reports, there's been no planning commission meeting since we met last. The planning commission does meet tomorrow. There's going to be a CDD overview and kind of a overall PC planning commission orientation. They have some new members. Anyone interested, take a look or watch the video, 1.5 speed or something at a future time. Let's see, I haven't been able to attend a Juneau Commission on Housing and Homelessness. I've asked but have never received a Zoom link. So hopefully I can get that by the Thursday meeting at noon. Title 49 Advisory Committee, we met last week. We heard from CDD staff about the comp plan and some, Title 49 interplays there. We also discussed some flexibility measures that were brought to the committee by Mr. Dumichel. For instance, allowing developers a 10, 20% flex in certain things from the table of dimensional standards like height or setbacks or something. Anyway, just an idea on, you got to put a number, but can there be some, room to make development happen? And anyway, without really impeding the the character or functionality of neighborhoods or certain zoning districts. Also talked about zoning incentives. So if a developer proposes things that would help achieve community goals, assembly goals, non-motorized transportation or something, they could get some incentives. We have a bonus program currently that sounds like it is just not really used. So appreciate his work on kind of, putting some of these flexibility measures in place, and the committee's perspective him on that. I do want to flag, just as the planning commission liaison, we do have a in-person only meeting on Wednesday, regarding the comp plan and some visioning. So be sure to check that out. Well, I'm sure you'll all be there. And then I just want to flag the legislature starts next week. On Tuesday, there's a Juneau welcome reception, the big reception that, is spearheaded by the Alaska Committee, but a lot of community partners and businesses support, including, I know, CBJ staff. 5:30 to 7:30 on Tuesday. I have to admit, I don't know if it's at Centennial Hall or Elizabeth Pratovich Hall, but I'm sure you'll hear about it. But yeah,
Centennial
just wanted to
Hall, yeah.
flag it. Thank you very much. And yeah, just, reminder to everyone to welcome the legislature back warmly to our Alaska's capital city. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And that also reminds us that we also, beside the community reception on January 20th, we are also having our legislative breakfast on January 22nd at 7 a.m. And we've already planning for that. So with that, I have nothing further. Staff, do you have anything further? Assembly, do you have anything further? We are adjourned. Oh, wait, excuse me. For the record, is there any public participation on non-agenda items? Go.
Everyone,